Today, Akshat, Hiran, and I going to present introduction and approach to translation criticism by Hussein Lance. Before moving further, I would like to inform you that the topic we are going to present is introduction of the book, an approach to translation criticism, Emma and Madam Bowry. Uh, in translation, which includes total 10 chapters in it, and it is written by Lance Hussein. Chapter 1 is introduction. So the question may arise, what is translation criticism? So it is simple. In a simple way, translation criticism is the systematic study, evaluation, and interpretation of different aspects of translated works. Now, it can also be defined as looking comprehensively at different aspects of translated work. Uh, and it can also have a concepts like a quality assessment of target text. Now, the target text means translation of the source text or the translation of the original text. So quality assessment of target text, especially its semantic and pragmatic equivalence regarding the source text, as well as another concept like assessment of the proceeding followed by the translator in order to translate the text. Now, according to Hussein Lance, this book sets out to examine ways in which literary text may be explored as a translation, not primarily to judge it, but to understand where the text stands in relation to its original by examining the interpretive potential that results from translation choices that have been made. Lens also points out about marketing strategies and translated works. So publisher reduce or nullify the translator roles, like a novel in translation is marketed as if it had been written by its original author alone, and often the translator's name does not even appear on the front cover. And for the general public, translation is at best unproblematic and thus not an issue. So Madame Bovary is Madame Bovary regardless of who has translated it, the work of Gustave Flaubert. So then Peter Fawcett notes that reviewers may damn an entire translations on the strength of the few awkward phrasing, and he puts that constitute an exercise in institutionalized irresponsibility, and unexplained authority to use a limited physical space, to brand a translation and a translator as a poor in translation to criterion assumed to be universal and unassociable, offering little or no evidence and giving a competent review reader no opportunity of objective assessment. In this regard or in this context, Raymond Borek writes that in many cases, reviewers treat the translated work as if they were dealing with an original writing written in their mother tongue. Okay, the original text, without betraying even by a single remark that it is in fact a translation. So further, Lance puts about negative comments in translation, how Antoine Berman spoke of himself, undertook a systematic but damning analysis of translation of John Donne. Then Lens tells the two prevailing attitude to translation, the descriptive translation studies and the cultural turn in translation studies, have not succeeded in fundamentally modifying. In that context, Sherry Simon comments that translators communicate, rewrite, manipulate a text in order to make it available to second language public. Now, thus, they can use language as a cultural intervention, and as a part of an effort to alter expressions of domination, whether at the level of concept, of syntax, or of terminology. Now, through with these all aspects, Georges Munin states that all the arguments against translation can be submitted by one single argument, and that argument is it is not the original, means the translation, it is not the original. Now Lenz introduced TQA, the translation quality assessment. He addresses that critical assessment of translation and the concomitant issues of quality probably as old as translation itself. Now, the two ideas are bound together in more general approaches that are often designated by the term translation quality assessment or TQA. So, translation quality assessment. Now, Lance discuss a translation quality assessment with the approach of Catherine Rabe, in which she argues three-pronged approach, like combining analysis of text type, linguistic components, and extra linguistic determinants, while admitting to the existence of an incalculable number of hybrid forms. And then she identified four major text types, like content focused, form focused, appeal focused, and audio medial texts. Now, content focused and form focused we might know, but the appeal focused and audio medial text is slightly new for us. So the appeal focused term is might new, as I told, which means both the content and the form are intended to provoke a particular reaction in the listener or reader, like appeal for likes and dislikes, or specific action. And the audio medial text type means radio, television, material, and theater play. The message reaches the receiver via channel. So yeah, this four major text type she introduces. Then, but Loschler points out the weaknesses, of this approach, about the vague notion of optimum equivalence, and the suggestion is that equivalence is established at least to some extent by bilingual dictionaries. And then Lance discuss the Julian Houses, a model of translation quality assessment, which was rewritten and revised after 20 years later as a translation quality assessment, a model revisited. Now here, House 6 for three main textual aspects to address: uh, theme dynamics, clausal linkage, maybe related to a linguistic perspective, and then iconic linkage, a written strategy that potential allows users to work more quickly and effectively relating to a particular work. But two aspects of her work, her approach, illustrate its limited applicability to literary text. One of it related to equivalence. Now, Lance further states equivalence is not a sufficient criterion for analyzing translation, and includes remark of Armin Paul Frank and team, that is, while developing an overwhelming complex analytical machinery, House has lost sight of the inner differentiation of literary work, like treating as she does a work as a linguistic field, and she fails to notice such literary feature as a change in the narrator's perspective, differentiation between narrators and characters. So the above, sorry. So utterances, development of character, forms of structural irony, or the interplay of the different styles. Now, the above quotation summarizes some of the difficulties faced by an approach that does not foreground the literary features of text. So translation quality assessment also fails to fully address the issues of interpretation. How a work is read, either is an original text or it's a translation, how a work is read. Now these are two major concerns that translation criticism has to confront. Now this, how Lance sets background, means this is how Lance sets the background for moving towards translation criticism. Yeah, so translation criticism. Lance makes distinction of three terms that are commonly used to discuss literary translations, that is analysis, evaluation, and criticism. And he further explains the importance of Gerard McAllister's definition, which is uh, the explication of the relationship between the target text and the factors involved in its production, including the source text, but without implying any value judgment. And the value judgment plays such a comprehensive role in a field of translation criticism. So here, friends, again, the target text is translation of the source text, and the source text is the text a translator is given to translate in another language. Okay. So Lance assumes that characteristic of translation analysis is indeed a lack of value judgment, and some scholars use translation as a means of illustrating different aspects of particular theory. Now here, McAllister's definition of translation evaluation is clearly limited to translation pedagogy, which seems unnecessary restrictions to Lance, because the term may be used to cover the pronouncement of that one commonly find in the literature where judgment is the main purpose of the analysis. Okay, and further, three more examples are put by Lance. The Thomas Buckley's study of orality in translation is a case point where the criteria used to judge translation is not just limited to one particular aspect, but ignores the complex parameters that lies behind translation choice. And the another example is Fabrice and Tuan's study of translation of short story by James Thurber. Antoine here concentrates on errors and stylistics incoherence to show how humor and subtlety of the original disappears in translation. Yeah. Then McAllister points out that the boundaries between the three approaches may be fuzzy, like Cavalier and Delport, for example, sets out to explore what translators tend to do, irrespective of what is being translated or which languages are involved. They thus points to the translator's acquired habits and sense of what sounds right. Uh, then translation in Lance approach goes beyond this statement, and that is stating the appropriateness of translation, which naturally also implies a value judgment, though it need to be quantified or even made explicit. Now, translation criticisms attempts to set out the interpretive potential of a translation seen in the light of an established interpretive framework whose origin lies in the source text. Now then, Lance discuss on the theoretical as well as methodological implications of different approaches to criticism. The first concern the question of interpretation, whether the issues of criticism as interpretive act is addressed. The second involves the methodology and terminology used to compare source and target passages, and Lance showing that terms such as the shift or deviations. Now, the statement of Coaster is Coaster elaborates more in the term shift, and he points out that shift is not the generally accepted term, and that people prefer change from it. But the Tory objects to that totally negative kind of reasoning required by any search for shift, like which would be encompass all the translation could have had a common with its source. Uh, so yeah, the first approach of Lewin, Zwett, and Coaster, shift and the tritium comparison is, now Zwett's work on translation criticism become available to English speaker at end of 1980, and she proposes two-stage model, like microtextual analysis of random passages of source and target texts, and then discusses how an accumulation of shifts on the microtextual level can lead to shift on the macrotextual levels. Like shifts are identified by means of transmits, like comprehensible textual units, and these are then compared to a common denominator or the architransm, uh, and which therefore functions as a tritium comparison is. But The weaknesses of this model have been underlined by a number of scholars, how does one judge at what point a micro level difference has an impact on the macro level. And Lance also not follow the comments of Zwets that those micro structural shifts which shows a certain frequency and consistency lead to shifts in the macro structure, since one marked shifts can influence the way a whole text is interpreted. Now, the shift themselves are cataloged on the basis of tertium, which cannot be said to be an objectified or yardstick, but rather the constructions of common denominator that aims for objectivity, and it which is necessarily and subjectivity formulated in one of the two languages under investigation. So the tertium, in other words, is itself a form of translation. The other major contribution to translation criticism that specifically uses the combination of shifts and the tertium comes from, says Coaster. Like, he sets out to examine the way in which one can describe a target text in its status as an interpretation of corresponding source text. His examples are taken from poetic discourse. So, and the model that he builds up, he calls it in the armamentarium, which can function for a relatively compact unit such as poem. He gives critical approach of many approach. Like, he stresses that the importance of collecting preliminary data before the work of criticism proper. This will include information about the translation's paratext and the type of edition, the translator's identity together with the other works translated, and as well as historical bibliographical information about the source text. He then sets out the construct the text world, which for him functions as the global tertium. This entails establishing a semantic pragmatic skeleton target text by examining the personae referred to and relation between the text world elements and the spatio-temporal location, the most important states, processes, actions, and events. So now the skeleton will then be checked against the source text and used for comparative analysis, like using traditional tools such as like says prosody, rhetoric, and intertextuality. Now, Lance points out both of this approach fails to term with its own subjectivity. And then comes Armin Paul Franks and the transfer-oriented approach. Now, Armin Frank and team took 11 years for this project, and at Göttingen Center for the Cooperative Study of Literary Translation, uh, who set out to plot a cultural history of literary translation. And they made distinction between internal and external translation history. So by means transfer oriented approach, it is between excesses of source and target oriented translation. The aim being to embrace is a consideration of the source text, the target side, and of the differences between them. Then Frank states that one might describe a literary translation as the result of compromise which a translator has found between demands originated in four norms areas: the source text as understood by the translator, the source literature, language, and culture as implicated in the text, the state of translation culture, and the target side. And then Coaster's analysis the target text and the elements, which means out that the importance of translation is an act of interpretation. So now this all takes more deviations as means of gaining insight, and he state and for stating the aims. which may have double focus, like both on the conditions prevalent in the target language and culture, and on the insights that act of translation can bring to the potential interpretation of the source text. So deviations identified are then beamed onto literary structure, which follows the analysis, determine the relation between the translation considered as whole and the source text. Uh, then Antoine Berman's critique. So now Berman's approach of translation criticism is also important because of its hermeneutic one. Again, the notion of interpretation. This approach is inspired by Ricoeur and Joss and Benjamin's critical approach. Some part of Berman's statement is quite comprehensive for this approach. Uh, um, Maybe the entire statements he made, since the classical age, the statement is follows this: since the classical age, there have been critical reviews of translation where criticism signifies judgment or evaluation, but if criticism means the rigorous analysis of translation, its fundamental characteristic, the project that has engendered it, the horizon of which it has arisen, the translator positions. If criticism fundamentally means releasing the truth of translation, then it must be said that translation criticism is only just starting to exist. Releasing the truth of translation is thus the ultimate aim. And Berman sets out this series of theoretical and methodological consideration to attain the aim. And Berman criticizes Masconic's approach and points out that Masconic is only attacks, the translation that he will treat work of major importance for our culture, like the Bible, and it argues Masconic only defends the great work alone. But Berman advocates a close reading of the target text. Why? Uh, because before turning to the source text, he advocates close reading. This is because this is avoid to falling into trap of compulsive comparison. But translation in confirms certain standards, and it seems preclude any license with the target language, and that has been taken in response to any idiosyncratic use of source language that the author may have exploited. Then Berman insists of the importance of the translator's positions and translation project and horizon. Now, for new translation, project will be determined in advance in accordance with the specific nature of the text. And Berman aims not only to release the truth of the translation, but also to prepare the ground for new translation. That is quite comprehensive to note down. And then he thus looks in detail at the way a translation is received within a target culture. In other words, it is critical reception as a work of literature, and the way in which it was presented to its new readers. And the last one is corpus-based translation studies. Now, the various approaches described till now have common denominator, like they rely primarily on manual collection of data to be analyzed. But before moving further, we have to understand what is corpus, what corpus mean, or what corpus suggest. So, in translation studies, like corpus resources and tools have come to play an increasingly important role both in translation studies research and in translation practices. In translation studies, corpora have provided a basis for empirical descriptive research, and corpus based studies usually involves the comparison of two corpora, like in which translated texts are compared with either their source text or with another corpus constructed according to similar design criteria, either in the same or in another language. So now the development of corpus processing tools and the availability of large computerized corpora have opened up a new possibilities in translation criticism. So Monday outlines advantages a computer-assisted approach, and which enables us that accurate, rapid access to surface feature over a whole text, reducing the addressedness and tedium of what has previously been manual task. In addition, the relating of results to a large computerized control corpora, such as now readily available British National Corpus, which promises a systematic way for the analysis to break out the confines of a single pair of text to enable preliminary consideration of influence of a typical target language patterns and of a translator specific idiolect in the creation of shapes. Now, Monday is understanding quotients when presenting frequency lists and the type ratio. Now, he notes, for example, that the comparative length of source text and target text may depend on many variables, and seems to be an area for more complex than previously thought, and worthy of careful future investigation on the text is. Now, a more ambitious study using corpus-based translation tools is Charlotte Bozaquios's "How Does It Feel?" Point of view in translation, appeared in 2007. Bozaquios's works takes as its starting point the fact that translation choices inevitably lead to presence of a different voice that of the translator in translated text, and she thus sets out to explore further the nature of the translator's discursive presence by investigating certain narratological aspects of relation between originals and translations. Then he and she chooses to examine the linguistic construction of point of view, investigating four major areas, like first is Dixie's, second is modality, third is transitivity, and fourth is free indirect discourse, which is FID. Now, Bozic's of books contains two extant case studies which illustrate both the substantial advantages of her methodological and also its drawbacks. Like in the chapter devoted to the lighthouse, she is somewhat deprecating about her own results, like which did not reach the level of interest expected. Now, pointing to the fact that the shift uncovered were minor. Now, the method used also have drawbacks, like some of which are raised in the section entitled as advantages and limited limitations of using corpus processing tools. Now, Boziox stresses the subjective nature of the interpreting process and limitations of quantification, and she also rightly points out that uh, concordances, meaning of is related to computer program that automatically constructs a concordance, uh, yeah, and cannot find what is not there, and notes that frequency lists and word statistics by the very nature tend to focus attention on a single decontextualized lexical items. So yeah, this was the end of my part. Now I would like to request Akshat to present further. Yeah, Akshat, you can go on.
हो गया क्या? चाहिए. अबे ये एक second. So I'll continue from Pankaj's part. I don't have a lot of things to say. Like पंकज मैं तो पहले ही तारीफ कर देता हूँ, बाद में एक बात होगी नहीं, 32-33 मिनट तो गजब बोल दिया इसने. चलो, I'll take it over from here. The part that I have to present from the chapter is in search of a new model. They were the translation studies were being talked about, but there is a need for a new model because there are certain issues addressed with the current model or the current running model. Issues such as uh, should we look first at the source text or the target text? Should the critic be looking for evidence of adhesion to different types of norms? The terminology is used. What agenda is the person who's translating goes through? All these things. These things are not discussed about. Most importantly, I personally think most importantly, the style. Style is something which wasn't being talked about very often, and it wasn't given as much importance as it should have been. So that these are the few issues which were addressed. I'll address them. I'll talk about them one by one. The first question is source versus target. So when the critic, the translation critic has to go through two levels of criticism. The first is the relevance with the source text, the original text. For example, as Pankaj put up a pretty good example, Madame Bovary, and the translation. The critic has to first see the source text, and then in relation to that, the target text. So the question is, which one should the critic be going for first, the source text, or then the target text is the translated version, and the source text is the original text. So that question has been there, and it hasn't been given enough importance. So the problem exactly is that if the critic sees the source text first and then sees the target text from the point of view of the source text, it is but obvious that any translation will look not enough. It would be it won't live up to the expectations. Inevitably fall short of the expectations because we are comparing it to the source text. So that is a problem there. But if you only look at the target text, that is just irrelevant because the originality it stems out from the original text. So you have to put both in context. So there has to be a different approach other than the source versus target question because you have to find a middle ground because of that. All right. The second issue to be addressed was terminology, because when critics write about the translation or when critics write about the methods of translation, the terminologies they use might have different connotations as to what they thought would be. For example, Frank used deviation or deforming tendencies was used by Berman. Now, these might be the words to be used by the critic, but they imply a negative stance. So there has to argue they argued in favor of a positive appreciation, but these terms have a negative stance, which is colloquial and it comes with the culture. A term such as shift is more dangerous. It's non-emotive, it's non-judgmental concept. But the point is there will always be a shift. So whenever critics use the term shift, they don't necessarily explain the sort of shift which is going through. So the shift, even if it is an intralingual translation, the translation of the text from the same language, there is a shift, no matter how little that is, but the shift is always there. So these terms have to be taken care of as to what when they are being used, in what context they are being used, and what implications will they carry. That is one other big issue. Third issue would be identifying passages. Like micro, so there are three levels of relationship. There's micro, meso, and macro. Now, if there is enough thought is being given to the translation, the strategies are sorted, then it is an overall complete text, the translated version. So even if you pick a few paragraphs or a few pieces of text out of the whole text, it will still remain coherent. And you can criticize the translation on the basis of that those paragraphs um, or those pieces of text. All right. But that doesn't necessarily happen always. We cannot always be sure the strategies used were very detailed or enhanced. And we cannot believe that on the face value, even if the translator says that the strategies are used, we cannot believe, it cannot be believed right away. So the text has to be studied. The text has to be studied in detail, and the translation has to be analyzed as to what strategies were used, were they detailed enough, were those appropriate, were they carried out in the proper way. This has to be there. So that is, so the micro level, when the data is collected, it has to be examined on the meso level, and then you have to hypothesize about how the macro level can be projected on these results. So that entire arc has to be completed. There was a lack of meso level relationship in the current translation, so that problem is being addressed. The next is the question of style. Uh, Style is an important element in literary translation, but it is pretty recently that scholars have started working in that field. All right. So style, if you see, even no matter how mature or immature the critique is, it is always seen as a second order element. It isn't given as much importance. But what is being addressed here is that style as a concept has to be given more importance because translator has his own voice, which he must explore, which he must be confident about, and then that typical voice of that translator should reflect in all his translations. That's why, rather, original writing, the writer has his own voice, but as soon as the translator translates the work, his voice reflects in it as well. Now, the point is that the meaning of the text does not change, but that is again interpretative. But that style has to reflect, not changing what the original text meant, what it wanted to convey, but it's the same thing being said in someone else's voice, which is the meaning of translation. It cannot be a word to word thesaurus based translation, right? That's the thing. The other one is the critic's interpretative position. Now, the interpretation is important because of critics, the critique has to go to a two-level interpretation. The first one is of the original text, the source text, which we call, and the second one is of the target text, the translation. And if the book belongs to the literary canon, then there can be multiple translations which the critic can refer to. But otherwise, he or she has to look at the two things, the source and the translated one. It is mostly a single text. What the translator interpreted from the source text is something which the critic has to analyze, and what the critic is also interpreting from the translated text, that is also something worth pondering upon. These two levels have to be carried out properly in a proper fashion, and that is a problem. So there are four theses about which Jean-Jacques Leclerc put ahead. All interpretations are possible. No interpretation is true. Some interpretations are just. Some interpretations are false, which holds true. Now, what is a false interpretation and what is a just interpretation? A false interpretation is either delirious, disregarding the constraints of the encyclopedia, or incorrect, disregarding the constraints that language and the text impose on the construction of interpretation. Now, the term encyclopedia here means the socio-cultural context, the language, the literary colloquialism, and all these things. Going ahead, there is a model which Lesser Kelly put forward, called the alter model, to understand how the entire thing gets carried forward. It's called the alter model. A layman would say that if you read a book, it's the author talking to the reader. It's as simple as that. What Lesserkill put forward was it's not that direct. There are actually three more layers between that. It's author, language, text, encyclopedia, and reader. What he means by that is author writes the text through language. Author uses language to write the text. The reader uses the encyclopedia to understand the text. The translated version, whenever it is written, it has to be part of that encyclopedia which reader is reading it through. If it's written in a particular language, in a particular social cultural context, that is a part of the encyclopedia. It has to go through the reader. Alright, so the reader won't be able to make perfect sense until and unless the text is written in that encyclopedia. And and it's the role of the author to write it in a language that the text is coherent, but it is also the role of the so encyclopedia plays an important part as reader understand its role. The second model, the translation version of this model, the alter model, one step forward because now author uses language to write the text and reader uses encyclopedia to understand the text. But now the reader also becomes a translator because that's what we're talking about. So now translator writes another text and uses another language to write that text. And now reader has a second encyclopedia to understand the translated version. So this is something a critic has to keep in mind, that there were two languages involved, two encyclopedias involved, and then it reaches the second reader. Or kept in mind when the critic is working on the thing. After that, that has been my side. I think the next thing is the methodology, which will be talked
Yes.
about by Pankaj, I guess.
Yeah.
So Pankaj will take it forward from here. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So I am presenting the part of Hiren.
Continue.
Yes, sir. Yeah. A brief outline of methodology. Now, the ordering that Houston suggests here involves a double movement from general macro level consideration to micro level, and then progressively back to the macro level. He identifies six major stages in the critical path. The first covers the multitude of preliminary data that critic assembles. The key second step is constructing the critical framework that allows one to identify passages from micro and meso level analysis, uh, which is step 3. The fourth step involves the move from the micro and meso level to the macro level, and step 5 brings elements together in order to identify the macro level effects and map out of the interpretive parts down which the translation takes us, leading to a hypothesis about the nature of the translation. And the final step involves testing that hypothesis on a further set of passages. Preliminary data. Basic information about the source text needs to be provided, from publishing history to editions available. Several target text parameters need to examine, like is it the first time that the work has been translated, or are there already existing translations? Has the work been translated into other languages, and if so, with what kind of reception? Is the translation genuinely new or reworking of an older translation? What a critical reception was given to the translation? So these questions. Now, information about the translators should be collected when possible. Antoine Berman suggests that one should not be satisfied with the translator's traditional anonymity, but that data should be collected on her linguistic and cultural background with reference to other works translated, books written, etc. Now, the interpretative act is influenced not just by the text proper, but by the whole apparatus surrounding it. This includes paratextual and peritextual elements of the source text and translations, together with an indication of the way in which they influence the reader's interpretation of the text. These will include the front and back covers, the introduction, bibliography, chronology, publisher's note, note on the translation, translator's notes, footnotes or endnotes, postface, and other appended texts. If a critical apparatus already exists, this can be of immense help to the critic when it comes to formulating the critical framework. The initial reviews of translations can be informative. Now, it is always important to establish whether critical works written in other languages refer to the source text or to the translation of it. Now, the final aspects of preliminary data concerns an overview of the macro structure of the texts. The critical second is the critical framework. Now the critical framework constitutes the basis on which micro level comparisons are carried out, micro and meso levels effect established, and macro level observations made. Now the initial framework is a necessary starting point that sets limits to what would otherwise be an infinitely long process, while acknowledging the source text's origin. Third is micro and meso level analysis. When the source text passages have been identified and the corresponding target text passage is found, the critic can examine translation choices and start to make provisional notes about their potential effects. It is thus necessary to work on the basis of an initial reading reflecting the elements identified in the critical framework. Now, this will allow one to concentrate on specific points and the examine the way in which they have been translated. Uh, it results in a series of meso level observations regarding the effect of the different translation choices. The effects are divided up into two broad categories: those that have an impact on the various voices that can be heard in the work, and those that modify the potential interpretations in various ways. The fourth one is macro level analysis. This macro structural level is a postulate that the critique constructs. It consists of a projection of the results gleaned and the lower levels, leading to an initial hypothesis about the nature of the translation. And it is produced by collecting the different effects that have been noted in order to assign the translation to one of the four categories. The first is divergent similarity, second is relative divergence, third is radical divergence, and fourth is adaptation. And the fifth is corpus. The corpus is made up of two great 19th century novels whose heroine shares the same Christian name, Emma. The first is Jane Austen's novel of 1815, which is set side by side with the three 20th century French translations. First is Saint Sagan, second one is Celicie Levergen, and third is Northern. And the second is Gustave Flaubert's masterpiece, Madame Bovary, together with six English translation. First is May, second is Hopkins, third is Russell, fourth is Stigmuller, fifth is Wall, and last one is Muldoon. In both cases, the first published translation has not been examined French translations, and the second Gustave Flaubert's novel, Madame Bovary, in both cases, the first published translation has not been examined. Now, Hewson says that his prime concern is to look at translations from different periods. Those chosen are spread over some 75 years. There is, however, an English bias with only one American text, which was from Stigmuller. And although both works have long achieved canonical status and are part of world literature, and the English translation of Flaubert's have helped to establish the writer's position in the English speaking world. And the result of being that position within world literature as seen through the French culture prism is a less glorious one. Now he adds that the two works and their translations will enable him to test his hypothesis that some translations allow just interpretations, whereas others takes the reader down interpretive paths, which cannot be predicted on the basis of the source text alone, and which following uh, uh, lessons and others may be categorized as false interpretation. And concluding remarks. Finally, he concludes chapter 2 is concerned with the preliminary data for the two novels and their translations, and the critical framework that he proposes for both. The tools necessary for describing translation choices on the micro and meso level, together with their potential effects take up the uh, third chapter with two further chapters used to illustrate the method and tools advocated, and chapter 6 addresses the move from the micro and meso level to micro levels, while chapter 7 and 8 examines instances of adaptation and radical divergence and relative divergence, and chapter 9 examples of divergent similarity, and chapter 10 concludes first by examining the inherent weaknesses of this approach and then looks at the overall results achieved for the corpus. So yeah, that was the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So questions, queries, doubts, problems. If the presenters face some doubts. No queries or questions? Anyway, then what we can do is that I can give you one day to read up, all of you, to read this chapter in the light of the presentation that is made, and then come up with queries and doubts tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you can read, go through it, and come up with problems and doubts if you have any. Because I know you are all geniuses, but then मेरे जैसे कोई ordinary लोग होंगे उनको समझ में नहीं आता होगा कुछ, तो वो पूछ सकते हैं. We can discuss it. Right. So tomorrow we'll meet and we'll discuss this. And there would be one more essay that is left, multimodality in translation. And who was going to make a presentation? Pooja, you were in conversation with Diotima and others, right? But they haven't responded.
Yeah, I actually texted him in the group. They were Diotima, Shirin, and Sakina, but none of them responded. So I actually texted Diotima personally. However, she said that they won't be able to do the presentation.
Any reasons why?
I don't know. Last week when I texted her, she told me she was not doing well.
Okay.
So yeah, that is what she told me. So that's it.
So what will we do about this essay? क्या करोगे? Shall I leave it for self-study or you want to have a presentation and discussion? If you want to have presentations, then I need volunteers. Akshat, now that you have turned up, let me catch hold of you. That is easy in the class. But he has disappeared, it seems. Okay. But I leave that to you, whether you want a presentation and discussion or you want it for self-study. क्या करना है बताओ. But the point is, you will have to work. I'm not going to spoon feed you anything. Because you have to be self-reliant in your studies. My job is to help you to study, not study on behalf of you.
Sir,
Bolo.
maybe we can read ourselves and come up with the doubts if that is fine.
Yeah, definitely. Read what on your own, you said?
Yes, sir.
I think Pooja, Akshat is willing to work with you. So get in touch with him. He has disappeared for haircut. He thought we are closing. But once his haircut is done, you can catch hold of his shindy and maybe get him to work. Is that okay, Pooja?
So you want me and Akshat to present?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were going to have self-study and then come up with the doubts and stuff.
No, that you will, but the presentation, you will be doing it. Maybe tomorrow will be the doubt session for this essay, and day after tomorrow, you can come up with presentation. Is that okay? So you have 2 days with you. Does that work?
Yeah, I was not ready for this presentation because this is not like my presentation anyways, but I will try to read.
Those people who have wriggled out, anyone who has not done any presentation, Merlin, I don't remember you making a presentation. Have you? Merlin, you did or you did not make a presentation? So you haven't done a presentation till now? Yeah, so you can work with Pooja, Akshat, and you, 3 of you will make a presentation day after tomorrow on multimodality in translation and interpretation studies. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, so there is a lecture on Indian aesthetics, which we are not going to do because anyway the presenters are have not been able to work on it. So we'll meet tomorrow for our regular class for this, and then followed by Indian aesthetics class where I think Preeti and others are going to make a presentation.
Sir,
Bolo.
you are going to tell us about Dhwani, the concept of Dhwani and
yeah. So we will do that tomorrow, Indian aesthetics
Okay,
class.
sir.
Okay. Anything else? So we are not meeting at 1:20.